Okay, Paul here, April 28th, 2018, and we're in the garden. Now we've planted the spring garden and we're just planting the summer garden now. I usually wait till April 15th to do that because that's the day of the last frost in Tennessee. We've had a very wet and cold spring here in Tennessee, so things are a little bit thrown off, but you can see I've got some great looking plants. These are my dandelions, which I eat. I eat the flowers and the greens. You could juice the roots and eat the roots or cook the roots into like a coffee, but I'll lose my plants if I do that. So I come out and weed my dandelions. And so these are spinach here, and here, and they've made it through the winter. And all my lettuces over here are coming up. And I got some peas and some cilantro over there. And then over here, I've got my tomato plants, which I've already planted from frozen tomatoes. So what I did is I took some of the crop last year, froze them, and I was going to eat them, but then they didn't taste very good, so I put them under the cages and they'll come up. And I try to grow all my tomato plants as volunteers. And the reason I do that is because if you do them in pots, the roots will hit the outside of the pot and the plant will become a dwarf. It signals to the plant that it's running out of room and it becomes a dwarf, and all my volunteer plants do so much better. So I'm simulating the volunteer process to grow my tomatoes, and I have 25 cages there. And I'll have squirrels and rabbits come and get them, but there's so many that there's plenty for me. And so what I do is I try to pretend that I'm in the business of growing microbes and not necessarily plants. So I have a sprinkler here to water the microbes. And so I turn the hose on, a timer, over in the corner, and it'll go for an hour, however long I set it. And I'll water here. And one of the big problems that I have is I try to get my garden to be too big. And the problem with a garden too big is it's a lot more work and you get too much food, and then you're busy trying to give away the food as opposed to using it, and so your quality of life is affected sort of negatively that way. So I only am allowed to cultivate in the summer this area covered by the sprinkler. The rest of it I'm going to let go as I go on, go away and travel and relax and try to stay out of the heat. It gets hot in Tennessee. So, and what I do is I mulch the ground very heavily. So to grow my microbes here, I use these leaves that my landscaper gave me, and I'll get a lot of worms in here, and it stays nice and wet under there. So it really helps with keeping the weeding and the watering down. And you can see we got a lot of fungi right here. And then one of the first things I do in the garden when I come to the garden is I take off my shoes. And you all are welcome to take off your shoes. You might get poked by a stick or something, but it'll be worth it. And that really gives you that sort of earthing sort of thing going. I don't understand. I also take off my shirt, but I'll spare you that because it ain't what it used to be. And then it's just a place of serenity and calm and peace. And then I eat a lot out here. So what I do is I come out and I take off my shoes, take off my shirt, and I eat. And I'll come out with my scissors and just come along and clip and eat and taste and just move from plant to plant. And then I find something that really tastes good. I eat that and park. And so by the time I come in from the garden, I've already had a huge salad. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm ready for the next course inside or something. And some days I get so much food out here that it is the whole meal in the summer. Because I don't have a greenhouse, I have to really work with the weather and the climate and the seasons. So, any questions?
Do you want to elaborate why you take your shirt off, like the health benefits of that?
Oh yeah, the reason I take my shirt off is to get a nice movie star tan. But it feels good. And then if the sun's too strong, I put my shirt back on, or my hat, or whatever the case, because I don't like being sunburned, and it gets uncomfortable after a while.
But the vitamin D.
And the vitamin D.
Have you considered having a greenhouse specifically suited to, maybe with glass?
Yeah.
Versus plastic specifically suited to this, and you could grow year round?
Yeah. The question was, have I considered getting a greenhouse? Well, I would love to, but it's a lot of work to maintain, and I'd worry about the winds come through here. And they come in pretty hard from the northeast in this open area. And I'd just be worried about it blowing away, but it would be nice. But I don't know if I would have enough, put enough effort into it to justify the heating and the cooling expenses. And I have friends that have greenhouses that I can buy their food too.
have a lily one, but it just gets rid of it.
Yeah.
How did you, the soil, tell us about, is it organic? How do you fertilize it?
Yep. All right, the question is, how do I do the soil? And the way I do the soil is we are blessed here with alluvial bottom soil, which is very fertile and very good, but it's somewhat depleted because this land was used for animal agriculture since about the 1870s. And so what I've learned is it's not the things you add to the soil that make it fertile. It's the insects and the microbes that make the soil fertile. And the way that works is you have a lot of sand in the soil, a lot of rocky substrate called sand. And the microbes will work on the sand and break it down into its soluble mineral components. So if your plant needs, say, copper or zinc, it'll put out a root exudate and say to that microbe, hey, I'm going to give you these root exudates or sugars, they're just forms of sugars, in exchange for the minerals I need. And so those microbes will interact with the plant root in this barter system and give the plant what it needs, and the plant gives the microbes the sugars that and the root exudates that it needs. And so you have this living soil model and this cycling of nutrients in the soil. And I was tilling a lot and then adding things, and that works for a few years, but every year your soil gets worse and worse, and it breaks down the microbe layer more and more, and you end up with less than when you started with. So I don't fertilize at all. All the fertility and all the work is being done by the microbes. So those worms are going up and down and creating cavities, and in those cavities, those little tunnels, they're putting out these glues that are keeping the soil open like a sponge. And so when it rains here, instead of all the soil washing away, the leaves and the soil are opened up by the microbes, and they absorb all of the water like a sponge.
You're going to talk about like how far away they can get nutrients.
Yeah, the range of the microbes. Okay, so this plant maybe has a range, its roots might go down 20 feet and might go out just to the drip line. And so when that plant needs a particular nutrient, it'll put out a signal, a chemical signal in the ground, and there's enzymes involved, and there's microbes and soil organisms and fungi. And so it'll put out a signal saying, hey, I need copper. And then the fungi, they exist on long hyphal networks. Hyphae is the name of the little strands of fungi underground. You know mushrooms, which is the form of fungi above ground, but it's the underground stuff I've had to learn about. So these hyphae can exist for miles, and they're connected, and they can move things across the fungal network. I don't have great insight into it. I'm not a scientist, but it's amazing just the way God's created all this. And so that root will get the nutrients it needs from that fungi over vast distances. And Paul Stamets and some of the people at fungi.com do a lot of videos and a lot of materials that really help illuminate this process. I don't have great insight into it. I just know it exists, and I exploit it in my garden. Any questions?
So you try to not disturb the soil as much as possible.
Right. I try not to disturb the soil. Now, also when you go barefoot, there's some forms of communication that happen there, and I don't have great insight into it, and I don't want to sort of talk about stuff I don't know. But what I think might happen is they're called homeostatic soil organisms come in through your feet, and we're all used to we were all used to sterilization, having really clean feet, but everyone's worried about fungal infections, right? And so here I am with my bare foot next to a fungi, something that's putting out a lot of spores. So but I don't get fungal infections when I come out here and do this. And I don't understand, don't know why, but it just works. When man was created, he was created in a garden. He wasn't created in aisle 5 of Kroger. He was created in a garden, and he's very well suited for a garden. And so I just noticed that I do real well out here doing this. Did I answer the question? Okay, sometimes I get going, I forget what the question even was. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so we'll wind it up there, and thanks for watching.